Okay, welcome guys to the Savvy Sab Show on RBN. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. We have interesting stories today. I'm excited to discuss these because I just am. I think they're interesting stories. So quick shout out to everyone watching on YouTube. Rockfin, I gotta fix Rockfin. For some reason, I still couldn't log into Rockfin. I don't know why. For RBN, I'll have to figure that out. But shout out to those of you watching on YouTube and Twitter. And we are going to get into it today. So I want to go ahead and start off with the thumbnail here to tell you what we're discussing today. So I have two stories. The first story is the Sudan conflict update. Now, a while back, I covered this story in the beginning, and I said I was going to keep an eye on that particular situation. There have been new developments. We're going to get into that. And we're also going to discuss this journalist here that you see in the right-hand corner, Eric. He writes for New York Magazine. He has been at it recently trying to smear Dr. West and any type of third-party effort. This particular article that we are going to examine, he is actually saying that the DNC does not rig their primaries. So we are going to debunk that. And I have plenty of receipts. So I am ready to get into it. All right, first and foremost, let me shout out a couple people in the chat. Shout out to RIP George Habish. It's Friday night. Get your drinks ready. I have tea. I have tea. Shout out to Kurt goes, hi, I'm Kurt. Hi, I'm Sabrina. Greetings, Mastermind says, if you say so, Kurt, you're the boss. Shout out to V says, yes, you are, Kurt. Greetings, Eric T. Red says, I'm the red. This is funny. I don't know what's happening in the chat here. Dana says, hello, RBN peeps. Shout out to Ashura says, let's go. Greetings, Pachico, who's an RBN member, says, yay, Sabby. Shout out to Brother Blake. Oh, snap, it's live and I'm on time. Yes, you are. Blake, what's up? Shout out to Jamel says, salute Sabrina, mods and all in the chat. What's going on? Rick says, hey, y'all. Shout out to Pirate. Whoops, that's not Pirate, that's Bryce. Shout out to Pirate says, yo. Greetings, Bryce says, finish the week with some Sabby this evening. That's right, it's the freaking weekend, man. What's going on? Lloyd says, hey, Sabby, is that a finger? What is that? I think that's a finger. I hope that's what that is. Greetings, where he says hello to a lot of people there in the chat. Shout out to Vicious E says, hey, everybody, happy Friday. And shout out to Outside Steeler fan says, just in time. We're going to have to talk about this Outside Steeler fan. No matter where I've lived, I've always met Steeler fans. Those and the Cowboys, they're everywhere. You cannot get away from them. You can't. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our first story, which is the Sudan conflict update. Now, we're going to backtrack a little bit here to explain the conflict to you because it's been a while since I covered that story. So first and foremost, I want to explain to you what is happening in Sudan. I have a clip here that I'm going to show. I think she actually does a really good job of breaking this down. This is Al Jazeera. Yeah, Al Jazeera English. And we're going to start off with this clip here just to give you an idea what this conflict is actually about. And then we'll get into the recent update with Sudan and whether or not Egypt will actually be able to put an end to this war. Let's get in.
Let's talk about what's happening in Sudan.
Rival forces remain locked in a power struggle despite international calls for a ceasefire.
It's an all-out battle for control of the country between Sudan's army and a paramilitary unit known as the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, led by men who used to be allies. Hundreds of people have been killed, and hundreds have been injured. There's fighting in different parts of Sudan, but it's heaviest in the capital, Khartoum. There have been attempts at a ceasefire, but they haven't lasted. There have been air attacks and shelling. The airport has been severely damaged. There's no running water or electricity. Supplies of food are running low.
Yeah, so a lot of people have vacated the area because there's no running water. The few that are left, I mean, they have no running water, no food. So we're looking at another situation where people are they're basically being forced to migrate somewhere else. I played another video last time where there were people in Sudan saying they don't want to leave their home. They want to stay there, but it's not safe for them to stay. And the reason why we are following this conflict is because this is actually predicted to be the next proxy war. So if Egypt is able to help end this conflict, we need to find a way to push that through.
This ridiculous battle that has civilians caught in the middle, and we have nothing to do with this.
So what's behind the fighting? Well, people in Sudan have been struggling to set up a democracy after decades under one-man rule. Omar al-Bashir came to power in a military coup in the late 1980s, became president, and stayed for 30 years, until people rose up and demanded that he step down. Then the army took over, and people didn't want them in charge either. So after pressure from protesters, the army agreed to share power with different political groups in a transitional government.
I'm just going to pause here for 1 second because she skipped over. There's something she missed in reference to Obama's presidency. Under Obama's presidency, the sanctions were actually lifted from Sudan. And now they have sanctions again. So that's an important piece I think that she should have put in there. So I just wanted to let you know about that.
The idea was that it would oversee a transition to a democratic system. But 2 years later, the army kicked out the prime minister and seized power again.
The people in Sudan seem to be trapped in this limbo, and they're going round and round in a circle that involves the same people, with no clear path or trajectory on how they can actually start to plan for a transition.
There have been ongoing talks to make that transition happen between the military and political groups representing that pro-democracy movement.
Anytime we talk about government transitions in other countries, you should know this is a perfect opportunity for the U.S. government to say, oh, why don't we help them out? Why don't we take out or remove some of these leaders that they have and help them in this process? And then the people end up being worse off in those countries than they were before U.S. intervention. Just keep that in mind.
But a major reason the process is being held up is because of an underlying rivalry between the army and the rapid support forces that have become like a second army. And many people see this as a personal rivalry between the army's leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who's effectively the leader of the country, and the leader of the RSF, General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, widely known as Hemeti. The thing is, for years, both men were on the same side and had been since the war in Darfur. Hemeti led a militia at the time widely known as the Janjaweed, and they were used by al-Bashir's army to fight rebels in the region of Darfur.
They were created to protect the upper echelon of the military and the senior commanders.
They're accused of carrying out war crimes there, and al-Bashir actually got charged with committing genocide.
Yep.
In 2013, the militia were rebranded as the Rapid Support Forces and worked with the army on different missions. Then, in 2019, Hemeti and General al-Burhan joined up to get rid of al-Bashir. And during the big pro-democracy protests, the RSF and the army were accused of killing more than 100 people.
So notice she says here that at one point, the RSF was actually working together with the army. So at one point, they were collaborating with each other, but things did definitely change.
But since then, the RSF has been acting a lot more independently, and they've grown more powerful.
They were able to establish vast investments around the country and outside the country, especially in the gold trade.
These two main actors, the army and the rapid support forces, were able to collude, now successfully for about 4 years to stay in power themselves. But there was always that core tension about who was the top dog between them.
So that brings us to the fighting right now. As part of Sudan's transition to democracy, there have been talks about integrating the RSF into the army, but they can't agree over the timeline. The army proposed 2 years, while the RSF wanted it to be 10.
The army, had been making a stand. They realized that the rapid support forces have been growing. The head, General Hemeti, has political ambitions himself. And I think there was a sense that if they did not somehow force the rapid support forces to agree to integrate and to go under them, that this force would keep growing and grow out of the control of the formal military.
So if the RSF is growing, they're becoming a larger group at this point in time, why would they want to join the army? Think about that for a second, right?
It's unclear who started the fighting, but on April 15th, both sides started trading accusations that they had attacked each other's bases in Khartoum. Then they fought to take control of the presidential palace, the airport, and the state TV channel. The army has air power, and they've been hitting RSF bases in the capital, many of them in residential areas.
Yep.
The RSF don't have planes, but they do have anti-aircraft weapons, and they have about 100,000 men. There have been plenty of calls for the fighting to stop, from Sudan's neighbors, the African Union, the UN, the EU, the US, and the UK. And there could be some leverage from countries like Egypt, which has been a close ally to the Sudanese army, and on the other side, the UAE, which has ties to the RSF.
Okay, now this video was uploaded 2 months ago. Okay, so that's why I wanted to take you back to this video, because I wanted you to see, how this all started. And also notice that she mentioned Egypt. And why is that important? That is important because now we are actually at that place where Egypt actually may be able to interfere here and maybe put an end to this conflict altogether. But will they do it? So I have another clip that I want to show you here. This is also from Al Jazeera. By the way, if you're looking for info on Sudan, Al Jazeera covers a lot of countries. I know there's a lot of focus on like Ukraine and Russia, and sometimes it seems like the coverage is mainly just European countries when you look at other networks. But Al Jazeera, they're really good about covering those countries that I feel sometimes are ignored a little bit. But you should fact check them too, because they kind of have, they kind of have their own agenda as well. But one thing I will say is that I also saw, and I have to talk to Black Agenda Report about this, I also saw an article by Black Agenda Report about Sudan as well. But it's not discussed as much as you would think. And I think more people need to pay attention to this conflict. Now, Egypt, can they help? It seems like it could be heading that way. Now, this video was uploaded just 1 day ago. So this is the most current information. Let me just fast forward through the credits here. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoum. Egypt is attempting to end the fighting in Sudan by hosting a summit of regional leaders. But Sudan's warring sides have not been invited. The United Nations is warning the conflict could turn into a full-scale civil war that could further destabilize the region. Millions of people have already been displaced, and more fighting will likely worsen an already dire humanitarian situation.
Now, I want to jump in here for just a second in reference to millions of people have been displaced in a civil war. So again, like I told you earlier, this is predicted to be the next proxy war. This could happen, right? So you have millions of people that have been displaced from Sudan. They go to other countries, other places just to get out of the war zone. Now they are basically refugees. And I think we know the sentiment around refugees right now. Globally, there is an anti-refugee sentiment that is growing across the globe. So just keep that in mind. They may not necessarily be welcomed to the places that they're going to, but they have to flee because it's not safe to live there.
And that will have further consequences for Sudan's neighbors. So, will the Cairo summit lead to some sort of compromise? If not, what's at stake for the entire region? We'll get to our guests in a moment, but first, this report from Katia Lopez Hodoyan.
Merci.
Months of fighting in Sudan is worrying its neighbors. Egypt's president invited leaders from countries that border Sudan to Cairo to find a solution. The UN is warning the conflict may soon turn into a full-scale civil war that could spread to other nations.
I'm sorry, I have to pause right here because look at the look on, when you look at Ethiopia, hold on. Let me pull it up here. Look at the look on his face. Ethiopia is like, Why am I involved in this? Ethiopia is like, we have our own issues to deal with, man. I ain't got time for this.
That could spread to other nations.
أولاً مطالبة الأطراف المتحاربة.
First, we're calling on warring sides in Sudan to stop the escalation and begin serious negotiations for a ceasefire.
See the difference between what they're asking and what the U.S. government is asking in reference to Russia and Ukraine? You don't hear the Biden administration saying, first, we're asking for a ceasefire. We're calling for peace. We want some type of, resolution here. We don't want this to escalate. No, you're not hearing that. The first response is we're going to send Ukraine more money and more weapons. But here you have the leader of Egypt saying we are calling for a ceasefire. They don't want it to escalate. You see the difference? Let's go on.
Second, we call on all Sudanese parties to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian supplies and their safe passage to areas that need it most, and developing a plan to guarantee protection for humanitarian aid convoys and international relief employees to facilitate their work.
Ceasefires between Sudan's army and its rival, the Rapid Support Forces, have been repeatedly broken. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is trying to change that.
That is the translator, Ashura. What's with the blur on their video? That's there's somebody there. You guys, I can see it better than you can, but there's someone there who's actually doing sign language, and they're blurring their face. Maybe that person asked to not be videotaped. Yeah, you can do that on YouTube, just FYI.
But Egypt, which historically has had close ties with the Sudanese army, did not invite Sudan's warring factions to the summit.
What's known as the current government has lost control of the situation in Sudan. They've lost the trust of the neighboring countries, or you can even say of countries across the region.
The conflict has led to a major humanitarian crisis. Within 3 months, more than 3 million people in Sudan have been displaced. About 700,000 of them have gone to neighboring countries.
You hear that? So see, just pay attention to this. Over 3 million have been displaced. Over 700,000 of them have gone to different countries. So they have become refugees. And get ready for it, because I'm going to go ahead and already predict this. If this is not resolved soon and they cannot return home soon, I'm hoping that it'll be safe to do so, it'll only be a matter of time before these refugees are scapegoated. It'll only be a matter of time before other countries start to scapegoat these refugees and say, we have higher crime because you came here. Our cost of living is higher because you came here. You already see this happening right now in France and Germany. You see this happening in other countries. So if this is not resolved soon, and that does happen, just remember you heard it here first. Just watch. 700,000 people, that's a lot of people.
Many of which were already struggling with their own economic and political issues.
My country, Chad, is suffering due to the consequences of what's happening in Sudan. Within 1 week, we received more than 150,000 refugees, most of them women and children.
The fighting, which started in the capital, Khartoum, has now spread westward to the already devastated Darfur region. The United Nations says the bodies of at least 87 people were found in a mass grave there, and says the Rapid Support Forces may have been responsible, a claim the RSF denies. Amid a power struggle with no clear winner, there's concern of further escalation.
Does that sound familiar? A power struggle with no clear winner? Does that sound familiar? Think about Russia and Ukraine, right? It's obvious, like, Ukraine is not going to win. This is obvious that that war needs to end. There needs to be a call for ceasefire, etc. But the fighting continues because it's encouraged by the U.S. government. Yes, when you are giving people weapons, when you are sending them money to fight, you are encouraging the escalation, contrary to what some people may say. That's why they think this may be the next proxy war.
Now, the question is whether regional leaders will manage to find a solution. Katia Lopez-Oloyan for Inside Story.
Okay, so we have to keep our eye on this story. And again, a lot of people are not talking about this, what's happening in Sudan. JB says it's basically a proxy war that puts the Sudanese people in the middle. Also, you won't ever see the Ukrainian refugees scapegoated, but you know why? Bingo. Because they already gave Ukrainian refugees passes to come to the United States, also to go to historically Black colleges. JB and I covered that a couple of months ago. And there's no scapegoating of them. It's usually refugees of color. So they have to find a way to put an end to this. And if Egypt is the one to do it, then I say go ahead and do it. Like, get this over with. Because the thing is that you can bet the U.S. government will find a way, some way, shape, or form to get their hands in the middle of all this. You can bet. Kurt says Africa is in BRICS now. They are so much safer. Well, South Africa is a part of BRICS. Remember, BRICS is different countries, not a whole continent. So South Africa is a part of BRICS. I haven't heard anything about the other countries in Africa joining BRICS. Outside Steelers fan says Africa doesn't need to see our slave-based system in their backyard. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Would this be happening if Gaddafi lived? I don't know. But see, these are the kind of questions that you kind of have to ask. We'll never know. Z says Ukraine conflict is really turning out to be a litmus test, RE, where these different players stand today. RE, the new global dynamics. I agree. And thank you for the super chat, Philosophical Thirstworms. That's an interesting name. Ethiopia's dam is going to absolutely destroy Egypt with drought. Egypt recently got some missiles. They could destroy the dam. Region is getting hot. It's a lot going on, guys. Eric says BRICS is currently accepting applications. That's true. That is true. I know. You're right about that. Oh, man. That's a good one. Marvin says BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, Rothschilds, Warburgs, Oppenheim, Kuhn Loeb, etc. all will benefit on death, destruction, rebuilding when you rebuild financial enslave the nation. Well said. P says the U.S. wants to drink the Sudan milkshake. What? Mark my words. Like, if this conflict isn't ended soon, mark my words, the U.S. will find another way to get involved. Again, there are sanctions on Sudan again now. Those sanctions were removed under President Obama. This is crazy. Why would you have sanctions on the country right now? They don't even have running water. And then they'll complain. Like, this is what I'm saying, guys. Listen to this. They put sanctions on the country. They already don't have running water. So they're being pushed out. They're being pushed out and they have to relocate somewhere else. 700,000 of them going to other countries. So then now the people in those other countries are like, well, we don't want your problem here. See, this is how it all plays out. And then, like I said, then they'll become scapegoats. Interesting. In a minute, I had hope for Egypt when they elected Morsi. It was sickening how Sisi treated him. V says we all want African nation to finally rise. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, we are going to the next story here. And this one is really this is a doozy. If you have not noticed, there are a group of journalists, particularly on Twitter, social media, right? And they have been heavily heavily smearing Dr. West because he is running third party. We've seen Jacobin smear Dr. West and say he should run as a Democrat. We've seen the New York Times. We've seen CNN, all these different outlets smearing Dr. West. But now something else has happened. You know, now they're just outright lying with bold-faced lies. And we're going to debunk one of those today. There is a journalist by the name of Eric Levitz. Now, Eric writes for New York Magazine, and he wrote an article recently. So this was published. Let me go ahead and share this because we're going to debunk this today. This is where we're going to spend most of our time tonight, by the way, is on this story. He wrote this article July 12th. Listen to this. The case for Cornel West 2024 is extremely weak. Now, I want to show you something. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. Actually, no, you can see it when I pull this up. Hold on. When I tell you a lot of times these liberals, the white moderate, have the same look, trust me, boo. Okay. So you see the picture of him here over to the right. There's the black rim glasses. I told you, him, Sam Cedar, Rachel Maddow. They all got the same look. Keith Olbermann. Trust me, okay? So he goes on to say, Cornel West recently decided, actually, make this bigger. The text is really small. Okay, there we go. Cornel West recently decided that the best way for him to advance economic and social justice in the U.S. would be to mount a third-party presidential campaign that, if history is any guide, will disproportionately siphon votes from the Democratic nominee. Lie number one, that is actually false. These Democrats, especially these Democrat journalists, they continue to spread this lie. And let me explain to you why it's false. I talked about this on Rising as well. The voters who come out to vote third party, the people who voted for Jill Stein in 2016, the people who voted for Gary Johnson in 2016, those voters will not vote for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. This is where they get this wrong. If Jill Stein and Gary Johnson did not run and there were no third-party candidates, those voters actually don't come out to vote for the Democrat or the Republican. Those voters actually stay home. And they continue to spread this lie. So we got to correct the first lie. Okay? Let's get through the first one. Two, for the people who always like to point back to Jill Stein, Hillary Clinton, Gary Johnson, Donald Trump, even if all of Gary Johnson's votes went to Donald Trump, this is what they're claiming here, and all of Jill Stein's votes went to Hillary Clinton, Hillary Clinton still loses. Okay? So this doesn't make any sense. All you have to do is look at the data and it shows you that. Let's get back into the article. That was the first lie. Thereby marginally increasing the odds of a second Trump presidency. I would say that Joe Biden increased those odds himself by being a poor president and not fulfilling his campaign promises. Most people to the left of Mitch McConnell disagree with West's assessment. Look at the comparison, guys. To the left of Mitch McConnell. Why are you looking for people to the left of Mitch McConnell? Why is Mitch McConnell the bar? That's the bar? A right-wing bigot? That's the bar? Let's go on. Various liberals have rehearsed the case for supporting America's only political viable coalition against right-wing rule. Again, liberals. Oh my God. Many socialists, meanwhile, have insisted that the best way for the left to exert influence over presidential politics is to contest for power within the Democratic Party. That is also incorrect. They're not socialist. There's a difference between democratic socialist and socialist. They're not the same. Do you see how we're not even made it through halfway of the article yet? Let's go on. But agreement on these points is not unanimous on the left. Problem number 3. The Democratic Party is not the left. You see what they do here? That's not left. It's just the Democratic Party is still a center right-wing party. Let's continue. One recent poll of a hypothetical 2024 race found West drawing 4% support nationally, erasing Joe Biden's advantage over Trump in the process. No, because Donald Trump was already beating Joe Biden in the polls before Dr. West announced he was running. They don't tell you that part, as if people have short-term memories. I don't. I remember. Let's go on. Meanwhile, Lily Sanchez publishes a case for West's candidacy in the Socialist Journal Current Affairs this week. Given that the past 2 presidential elections were decided by tens of thousands of votes between a handful of key states, it seems worth engaging with the pro-West perspective, fringe though it may be. Highlight fringe. Using the same vocabulary as the Democratic Party. This is how you know that mainstream media is in bed with the Democratic Party, the liberal media. Okay? Because what is CNN telling you? What are DNC politicians telling you? They're using this word fringe, chaotic. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to how even some of the progressives, we call regressives now, even some of the progressives were saying these words. Pramila Jayapal, anything outside of the duopoly, fringe, chaotic. That is to give people the impression that what they're trying to do is bad, is harmful. But the word fringe to some younger voters may actually be cool. Younger people may see the word fringe and say, oh, so they're different. Awesome. That could actually work against the Democratic Party. Now, this is the piece that we are going to target. The rigging. Right about here. It is true that members of the DNC were biased in favor of Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016. It does not follow that the reason Bernie Sanders won 1,000 fewer delegates and nearly 4 million fewer votes than Clinton was because Donna Brazile gave her campaign advance notice of some questions at a CNN town hall that very few voters watched. First of all, define few. How many is few? Second of all, the fact that you're even admitting to the fact that Donna Brazile did that, and you're not calling out the problem that shouldn't have happened in the first damn place, and the fact that there was bias, that in itself is an issue. Sanders did not lose the 2016 campaign because the Democratic Party candidates aren't accountable to the electorate, but because they are. Listen to this bullshit, okay? A majority of Democratic primary voters preferred Clinton. A majority of Democratic primary voters preferred Clinton. That is actually false. We went over this a couple of nights ago. We went over the polls between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. There's an article called "Why is Bernie Sanders Beating Hillary Clinton?" Look it up. And they show the charts. I'll see if I have time, I'll see if I can pull it back up. And it showed how Bernie was beating Hillary Clinton. So the problem is not only that the DNC rigged the primary, but that the DNC chose the losing candidate for the nominee. And I made this argument just a couple nights ago on my show. Those polls showed you at that point in time that Bernie Sanders was more favorable over Hillary Clinton. And the DNC, because they did not want Bernie Sanders, they did not want someone who wanted to fight for the people. I guess we see he ain't fighting for the people now. But at that point in time, that's what he was running on. They said, no, Hillary is the selected candidate. Remember, they can select the candidate. We're going to get into all of that in just a minute. They chose the losing candidate to be the nominee. I still say this again. Bernie Sanders could have beat Donald Trump in 2016. Let's go on. A majority of Democratic voters preferred Clinton. That was wrong. Whether out of a belief that she was more electable or more aligned with their ideological views or more well-known or personally appealing. I don't think anybody really agreed that she was appealing. That was one of her flaws. Hillary Clinton was not charismatic. She's not charming. She doesn't have that likability factor. That was part of the problem. The basis for asserting that Sanders was cheated out of the nomination in 2020 is even harder to comprehend. Vote tallying at the Iowa caucuses that year was dysfunctional and served to delay a declaration of the winner. But Pete Buttigieg announced that he had won. Let's continue. On the night of the vote, some Sanders supporters voiced the conspiratorial belief that the delay was intended to diminish media coverage of their candidate's triumph and sap his momentum heading into New Hampshire. In reality, however, it was Pete Buttigieg who won Iowa and whose campaign was therefore marginally undermined by the delayed results. No, because it was actually revealed later on that Bernie actually had the most votes. Like, I don't even know. It just, let's go on a little bit more, and then I'm going to show some receipts. It is true that Democratic leaders, including Barack Obama, encouraged the race's relative moderates to unite behind Biden after his victory in South Carolina so as to avoid splitting the anti-Bernie vote and delivering him the nomination. But there is nothing undemocratic about political figures endorsing their preferred candidates in an election. Endorsing a candidate and telling people to drop out are two different things. Let's go into another receipt. See, he already getting me upset. I'm already a little pissed. Little pissed because Nico, and I don't know if you've seen this, Nico House remembers this very well. Very, very well. Because Nico, hold on. Let me make sure this is, sometimes the Twitter videos just play on their own, and it's kind of annoying when that happens. Okay, here we go. Because Nico House actually was the one who went to attorneys Jared Beck and Elizabeth Beck. I'm going to show that in just a second in reference to the DNC fraud lawsuit. Now, let's go ahead and get into this video because obviously Nico read this article as well, and he had some things to say, and he put it in video form. So let's go ahead and play this. This is hilarious.
In this article by Eric Levitz, written in New York Magazine, he argues that people are stupid for thinking that the Democratic primaries is rigged against leftist candidates. Now, why would anyone think that the Democratic primary is rigged? Oh, because here's the former DNC chair candidate, Tom Perez, admitting the Democratic primaries were rigged. And here's Donna Brazile, another former DNC chair, admitting that she shared debate questions with Hillary Clinton. And by the way, the only reason Donna Brazile became the DNC chair was because Debbie Wasserman Schultz got fired because she rigged the primaries.
But Eric, who wrote this article, expects us to just forget all of this, that all of these things happened. Let's continue. There's more.
And then there's former presidential candidate and Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren also saying that the Democratic primary was rigged against Bernie Sanders. And then there was that time during the DNC fraud lawsuit, which happened because the DNC rigged their primaries, that the DNC's own attorney argued there in court that they could choose their own candidate and we can't do shit about it. And then there's this, Tom Perez and Bernie Sanders going on a tour together because the DNC was trying to apologize to Bernie Sanders and his supporters for cheating them during a primary. I'm going to say what they want. And I'm going to tell you that they're really upset that Cornel West is not tap dancing for the Democratic Party. It is instead choosing to call out the atrocities, the hypocrisy, and the failures of the party that is supposed to be for the people.
telling it like it is. Where's the lie? Where's the lie? Now, it was like a month or two ago, actually might have been longer than that now. I interviewed Jared and Elizabeth Beck, who were the DNC fraud lawsuit lawyers. Now, a lot of people forgot about them, but I brought them back because I was starting to see people get excited and really pumped up and thinking that people like Marianne and RFK Jr. have a chance within the Democratic Party, which they do not. And I said, if there is a way for me to reach out to Jared and Elizabeth Beck to get them to come back on to come onto the show, because it was Nico who talked to them the first time, to get them to come onto the show, just to remind people that this is all rigged. So I did. So let me go ahead and share that. So this was 1 month ago. I didn't think it was that long ago. 1 month ago. Listen to this. This little snippet here. This is Jared Beck, and this is his wife, Elizabeth Beck. Listen to this.
I want to get the whole story out. So he came to our office, and we actually gave him a desk and a computer, and we're like, basically, it's sort of our perspective was.
They're talking about Nico, by the way, and when Nico came to them.
The documents that had been dropped by Guccifer 2.0 and how we could, what they meant and how we could plead a legal theory on behalf of the hundreds and then thousands of people that were calling our office and emailing us saying, this is such BS, this rigging. Is there anything, that we can do? And by the way, this is even before the convention started. Okay, I want to make that very clear. I think it's important that people understand that we actually got the lawsuit off the ground, before, Philadelphia happened and the convention was formally given to Hillary Clinton. We had already had that lawsuit on file, and our aim was not to reverse the results or all these Trump lawsuits try to do, but we were trying to get the money back for the people that had contacted us because we saw this as a huge monetary fraud.
So with their lawsuit, they weren't even trying to get the results overturned. They were just trying to give people all those small dollar donations that went to Bernie Sanders from working class people. They were just trying to get those people to get their money back. Because there were a lot of people who barely had $10, $5 to give, but gave it anyway because they believed in Bernie Sanders. Let's go on.
To the tune of $220 million that went to the Bernie Sanders campaign and then into the Democratic Party ecosystem. That was just, we had homeless people who were our clients, okay, that were reaching into their pockets. That's how awful this thing was, okay? And in retrospect, it was a very traumatic experience, I think, for a lot of people. It certainly, changed our lives. I hope some lessons were learned from it, and I hope
don't donate.
Right, but I hope that the record that we created is of some use to people going forward, especially in these times, as you have candidates like Robert Kennedy and Marianne Wilson coming around with their hand out, wanting you to reach into your pocket as, inflation is on the rise and the economy is going into the shitter. They want you to send your money to their enterprises. And, my advice as, a fellow citizen and as a lawyer and as somebody who has litigated this issue extensively is, you can do what you want with your money, but just be aware that this process is 100% fake. So don't get angry, and certainly don't call our office asking to file a lawsuit, because we're not doing anything close to that ever again.
So you can see there's some bitterness there. They were upset. If you haven't seen that interview, you have to watch the whole interview. There's some bitterness there. There's also hurt and pain because they really did fight. They really did fight to make things right. Now, I'm going to come back to that video in just a second because I want to show you what happened and what was said in the courtroom. So I got to put this back up because people forget about this. I don't. And I think it's always good to make sure that you have this in your back pocket. This is a very important lesson here from the DNC attorney, Bruce Spiva. Bruce Spiva actually argued on the side of the DNC. Now, I don't know where Bruce is today. I tried to find contact info for him to bring him on and explain all this jazz a little bit more, but couldn't find Bruce. But this is what Bruce said during the case. I'm gonna make it really big for the people in the back. There we go. Listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. DNC attorney Bruce Spiva. There is no such thing as a Democrat. The DNC just encourages people to vote for the Democratic Party. That's point number one. Point number two, no one has any right to an expectation of a fair election. Ding, 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 ding. Hello. This is the DNC's attorney. Let's go on. If the DNC wishes to select a candidate in the primaries instead of a free election process, that is their right. But according to hipster Eric, who wrote for the New Yorker, there's no rigging going on. The court said that the DNC does not have the right to give you a fair election. What does that tell you? Let's continue. Donating money to Bernie Sanders doesn't mean you thought that money was going to assist him to win the primary. You have no right to think the DNC was obligated to follow their own charter and internal policies about elections. And that was one of the things that Jared and Elizabeth Beck were arguing in court, is that, but the DNC's charter says this. So they were able to point to the charter as their resource and say, no, they cannot do this. They could not rig this, and this is the reason why, and pointed to the charter. But according to the court and what the judge determined is that they do not have to even follow their own charter. There's more. Discussion of and any disputes with the DNC do not belong in a transparent process in a court of law. The DNC is a private association. Look it up, guys. Look up DNC. It says corporation. It's corporate. It's a corporation. There's no party. This is just a corporation picking candidates. That's it. The DNC is a private association which should never be asked to engage in the discovery process or have to reveal any of its internal workings or strategies. They don't even have to talk about that. Should they decide to select a candidate rather than allow a fair election of a candidate. But according to hipster Eric, these things didn't happen. Some people forgot. I didn't forget. That is attorney Bruce Spiva. DNC is a corporation. I wish more Americans knew that. I think if more Americans knew that, they wouldn't be showing up to vote for them. If more Americans knew that this process is not transparent, that this process is not fair, and legally they don't have to be fair, I don't think I don't think a lot of Americans will participate. They don't want you to know about that. Just remember that, guys. Now let's go back to the video. There's another part I want to play here. Go in here. You put up the, I just want to speed up just a little bit. Okay, I went over the Bruce Spiva thing. And then after that. Does it go back that far, do you think? Oh, yeah. This part is important. This part about the, okay, here we go. To follow their own charter and internal policies about elections. And then this last piece here, discussion of and any disputes with the DNC do not belong in a transparent process in a court of law. The DNC is a private association which should never be asked to engage in the discovery process or have to reveal any of its internal workings or strategies should they decide to select a candidate rather than allow a fair election of a candidate. And the question that I have about this statement that the DNC is basically a private corporation, so to speak. Mm-hmm. How far does this go back? Listen to this. Does this go back all the way back to, since we mentioned RFK Jr., to when JFK ran for president, or when the original Bobby Kennedy ran for president? Does it go back that far, do you think?
So I wrote a book about the lawsuit, and I attempted to sort of trace that question back through time. And in terms of the rigging that you see now, where, you know, the DNC operates as a private entity, you know, with no duty to the people. It purports to call its members, but then its lawyer gets up in court and says it has no members. But that you see that go back to the 60s.
You guys heard that? It's in the book. He wrote a book called What Happened to Bernie Sanders. You can probably find it on Amazon or something like that. But What Happened to Bernie Sanders? You should read that book. Since the 60s, they have been selecting our leaders. This is not a new thing. After PACs came in, after super PACs came in, super PACs and PACs weren't always a part of the political process. Those things happen later on. You see what happens once they brought in the corporate money. All of a sudden, they're like, okay, we're going to pick the candidates now. And I believe I asked him about JFK.
You see that that style of rigging going back to McGovern, the McGovern campaign in the 70s. It's institutional. It's not, 100% the same every primary system, because they're constantly tweaking the rules and the role of superdelegates and things like that. But I'd say by the time it gets to 2016, they have the process pretty airtight. And the real difference between our times and sort of back then is the role of the media. Okay, the media is like 100% propaganda apparatus for, the duopoly party system, and has no journalistic interest whatsoever. I mean, it's really devolved to that. I think it was a little bit different. I think it was more of an infiltration by intelligence agencies in the 60s and 70s, and less of like a wholesale capture and propaganda operation. Now it's a very aggressive propaganda operation that the media runs against its own population on behalf of the hand-selected puppets that it puts up there as candidates. So
it is now a well-oiled machine that includes the intelligence agencies as well. Didn't I tell you all these people work together? The U.S. government, these intelligence agencies, the media is a big one, and the corporations, all these people work together. Why do you guys think they don't want to get corporate money out of electoral politics? Those politicians can still win on grassroots campaigns. We've seen politicians win on grassroots campaigns. They don't want to get the money out because they've sold their souls to these companies. The corporations control everything. Everything. Why do you think Barack Obama chose to bail out Wall Street instead of the American people that had their homes stolen from them? They are owned. The politicians that you see in DC, the ones that belong to the duopoly, these people are puppets. It's all been decided, selected, chosen. Now, I'm going to see if he holds up that book, because I thought he held up the book in the video. Was that earlier on? Oh, that was earlier on. I thought he held up that book at some point. Well, maybe I missed it. I'm sorry, guys. Oh, is that it? No, that's a comment. Shoot. Sorry. I'm usually more organized than this. I thought he held up. Anyway, the book is called What Happened to Bernie Sanders? There it is. Okay, here we go.
I was talking to someone and he was from Spain, and I said, what binds people from Spain? And he was kind of joking. He says, well, we take naps.
Yeah.
He was joking. But here's the thing.
She was really funny. She was a trip.
I was born in Korea. Koreans don't take naps. It's a cultural thing that binds them. And food is something that binds a lot of cultures.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I say that as a Korean because Koreans eat kimchi. And the Chinese make fun of Koreans.
Well,
they call them the kimchi eaters because China doesn't eat.
He had the book. I don't know what happened. Anyway, the book is right there. Oh, it keeps coming back. I don't know. It may be too. Anyway, the book is called What Happened to Bernie Sanders. You should read that book. This video, if you want to see the full video, it's called DNC Fraud Lawsuit Lawyers Speak Out. Why Marianne and RFK Jr. can't win. So that's the clip from the live stream. And that was posted 1 month ago. If you want to watch the full interview, it's an interesting conversation, you know, but again, obviously there was a lot of hurt there. Like you could tell for those of you who saw the full interview, there was a lot of hurt because they really were out there trying to fight to help those people get their money back. And not even to overturn it, just to give people their money, you know? So it's a mess. It's a hot mess, you guys. But anyway, that journalist, Eric, is blatantly lying. I just showed you receipts. So he's an operative, okay? These people who work for these mainstream media, liberal outlets, their job is to keep you in the Democratic Party. They see the numbers are changing. They see more people are leaving the Democratic Party, particularly Black men are leaving the Democratic Party. Now tell me why that's happening. They're there to maintain the status quo. They don't want any type of disruption. Thank you for the super chat, Janice. Donald Trump received 9% of his total vote count from registered Democrats. Democrats to Republican voters outnumber Green votes, usually 5-1. Thank you for that. Dwayne said, this is why we must abolish political parties. That's something Roger Meadows always says. And Z says, does this mean our government has already been privatized? Oh, Z, the questions. Good question. So you guys see. Hopefully you learned something today. Now, before I go, I do want to give a shout out here to the awesome-tastic Aaron. I don't know why that's blurry. Why is that blurry? That never happened before. Very weird. Anyway, RBN Labor and Bills fundraiser. This is to help pay, our labor. Aaron makes these awesome thumbnails like the one that you just looked at when you came to this video. That's not the one. I don't know what's happening here. Oh, here we go. Like the one you just saw. This is all Aaron's work. I can't create this. I have no graphic design skills. Anywho, if you can donate to help out Aaron, Venmo at Revolutionary Blackout, Cash App is the $sign mutual aid forever. And that helps pay Aaron. Other than that, guys, I am heading out. If you want more Sabby, I'll be live on my channel in about an hour at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And I got a couple of news stories to cover over there as well. But share this video. If you're new, subscribe. Don't forget to like the video, but share this video with people because more people need to hear about the DNC. All right, guys, that's it for me. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.